Hey, and welcome to Turo Fitness Podcast, a podcast for people who want to get no BS information about fitness and know that fitness is about so much more than losing scale weight. It's about feeling confident in your skin and empowered in your life. I'm your host, Turo Virta, personal trainer, strength and nutrition coach, and most of all, a husband of my beautiful wife, Miriam. Each week, my guests and me will give you some no BS fitness tips and motivate you to take action in your own personal fitness journey as we talk about nutrition, exercise, mindset, personal development, and executing in life with enjoyable but still effective strategies. If your goal is to look better, feel and be strong and experience transformation from inside out, you, my friend, are in the right place. Thank you for jumping in. And now let's jump into today's episode.
Okay.
So welcome to Turo Fitness Podcast. In today's episode, I have a guest, Dustin Baker. So without me telling who Dustin is, first of all, welcome to my show, Dustin. And if you don't mind, tell a little bit my audience who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate your time. Like you said, my name's Dustin. I am the president of a company called Bioprotein Technology. We make non-synthetic alternatives to common prescription pharmaceutical drugs. Our big claim to fame is the product we make called BioPro Plus, which is a non-synthetic alternative to human growth hormone treatments. Our specialties really are and continue to be endocrine and hormonal products for individuals who are interested in optimizing their health, wellness, and human physiology without necessarily injecting themselves or taking on prescription medications or prescription drugs that might change that physiology for the long term or put them at risk for any number of side effects that typically come along with those styles of treatments.
So I'm curious to know, like, what is like if somebody like doesn't know what is HGH, like what it means, and if you
HGH stands for human growth hormone. So men and women, their master hormone in their bodies is actually growth hormone. Okay, it's with men we hear a lot of words about testosterone. With women we hear a lot of words like progesterone and estrogen, which are great. Men have testosterone and estrogen. Women have testosterone and estrogen, clearly in different levels, which makes them biologically male, biologically female. But lesser known fact these days is about growth hormone. But it's the hormone that is responsible for your metabolic function, for wound healing, for sexual function, for the skin, how your skin looks, skin cells. It's a chemical catalyst that creates a cellular change in your body. Unfortunately, it decreases every single year after you finish puberty. So as soon as you finish puberty, it begins its decline, typically around 1% to 2% potentially per year. And then in a little bit more rare cases, you can be at a decline of about 50% by the age of 35, which is typically why people wake up, 40, 44 years old and start feeling a little different, not exactly as spry or as energetic as they once did. And that typically can be related to a hormone decline.
Mm-hmm. So what are kind of signs, or how you can if I'm 42 years old, so I'm curious to know, like, what signs do you have, or how you get diagnosed if you have lower levels?
Yeah, sure. So typically the first signs of a hormonal decline, I mean, we're all going through it, okay? But the signs that are something maybe you should be aware of are actually the depression and anxiety they are many times situationally based, right? So there are things that occur in our lives, but we are more prone to depression and anxiety when we have things like lowered growth hormone. Lower energy levels is a key indicator. Lower sexual drive and function, sexual dysfunction is a key indicator. Even things like sleep disturbances, where you're lacking getting the appropriate amount of sleep, which is a horrible cyclical negative thing, because you have to have optimum sleep to secrete optimal levels of this hormone. And even things as simple as what we call stress fat. It's just a term we like to use, but subcutaneous fat stored around typically your midsection, hips, things like that, which are indicative of higher cortisol levels, which is stress, and lower hormone levels, such as growth hormone specifically.
Mm-hmm. And is there like how you get is there some you take it with the blood test or how you get tested if you like then?
Yeah. So these days, I'm in the United States, I'm in Florida, so hormone clinics are basically everywhere on every corner of the street. You have like a Starbucks, a McDonald's, and and a hormone clinic. And so you can go to any one of these clinics. I don't potentially a general practitioner would maybe call out for these types of tests, but you can get a typical blood panel. So a normal hormonal blood panel is a normal thing. We recommend everybody get them. However, when you're testing for a hormone like growth hormone, you actually have to specifically ask for a test. So you're going to be looking for a biomarker called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor number 1. And what that is it's the actual metabolite. It's the end result of growth hormone itself. You can't actually test for consistent levels of growth hormone specifically because it's what's called a pulsating hormone. It goes up, it goes down, depending upon how you spur it or your sleep and all different other types of factors. You actually have to test for its direct metabolite, the end result, IGF-1. And that is based on a numerical scale of where your levels should be depending upon your age. And then if you are low, then you can start looking at what kind of options are available to you. There are several on how to optimize those levels to get back to feeling a little bit better about yourself.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned about first of all, thank you. That's like something like we are not. I live in Italy, and it's not like it's not yet some huge thing. Like obviously there is a lot of people are talking about hormone levels, but it's not still like hey, we don't have Starbucks here either. Too many, so or McDonald's. So it's all that kind of stuff. It's coming a little bit after, and obviously in bigger cities, but it's still like we don't have fortunately too much like a fast foods or this kind of drugstores or hormones. That's what you have already there. But you mentioned those opportunities or how to improve it. You said that there are several ways how to improve it.
Sure.
So what are like, if we start like with the natural ways, which are natural ways to...
The cheapest, fastest way to improve hormonal function in human beings is to get an appropriate and adequate amount of sleep. Mm-hmm. So, and I can only relate here to, the American studies because that's, what I read and have to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. But at least here in the United States, Americans that are a bit different, health decline, I think, than several other countries around the world. But in America, I think it's something like 68% of Americans have some sort of chronic sleep deprivation, meaning they're not getting adequate amount of sleep. Okay. And so you have two very important sleep cycles in your body. You have slow wave sleep and REM sleep. Those are the two most important, I should say. You have other cycles, but those are the two most important. Now, the reason why they're important is because during those sleep cycles is when you actually are recovering as a human being. That's where 70 to 90% of your hormonal secretion naturally occurs. So if you are inhibiting those sleep cycles, and they are deep sleep cycles, if you're inhibiting them in any way, you are going to automatically inhibit your body's natural ability to secrete those hormones. So if you are living in a constant state of stress or a constant state of sleep deprivation, even if it's just, not as much as you think, you are automatically going to inhibit those sleep cycles. So if you can improve those, and you can do that very simply by improving what we call sleep hygiene, your sleep environment, the time you sleep, limiting things like alcohol or sugars or different things before bed, certain sleep temperatures. So actually it's proven that, human beings, I believe, and I don't quote me specifically on this, but I think the appropriate sleep temperature is like 68 to 70 degrees. And so different things like that can improve your body's ability to get into these deep sleep cycles, which will then automatically, literally overnight, no pun intended, improve your hormonal function drastically. We like to say getting appropriate for somebody who has inadequate sleep, getting appropriate sleep for the, first time is basically as close you can get to adding a steroid into your life or a performance enhancing drug.
Yeah. No, sleep is it's something like my wife is always telling me like that what is like am I getting old or maybe it's about that, but I try to get to sleep into a bed every single day, same time, prioritizing my sleep to get my at least 7.5, 8 hours sleep, and sleeping like with obviously with having a good mattress, good pillow, and those sleeping conditions, and they have been game changer. I feel very energized, like a lot better than earlier, and obviously when there are situations in life that you are going out, you can't follow your normal rhythm, you consume some alcohol, and how much is that affecting? Like obviously we have many of us have these kind of sleep trackers. If you are looking
Yep.
what kind of how it's affecting even small amounts of alcohol, like you think that 1 or 2 beers,
Alcohol destroys your sleep. It'll
it's
actually absolutely
wow.
destroy your deep sleep. You might be unconscious, right? So you
Yeah.
might be asleep, but you're not
Mhm.
getting good sleep.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's quite eye-opening.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously those like what you like it doesn't mean like even those sleep trackers, of course, they might say that you didn't have a good sleep. It doesn't mean that they are always accurate, but always you get pretty good understanding like that what is how much is affecting, what is affecting, and what kind of trends are happening, like what foods when you were eating, what kind of foods if you were consuming alcohol, and then in the long term that gives benefits. And I had in my podcast sleep doctor Shelby Harris, and she actually shared like all these, like I think most of us we have heard about these techniques like blue light, avoiding blue light,
Yep.
going to bed same time. But one thing what she mentioned what was interesting for me was morning routine. Like we most of focus on morning routine and or evening routine, what you could do close to your bedtime. But she said that actually what helps most and is starting your day. Like that if you wake up, for example, 6 o'clock in the morning, to get right away the first thing like a really light. Like ideally, it would be sunlight, but if you are living in a place that 6 a.m. there is no sunlight, even some kind of like a LED light or bright like a ring light or something, that is waking up your body, and that is causing you that you are then your body is awake and you are actually falling asleep earlier. And if you are having a trouble to fall asleep, and obviously things like being outside, doing some kind of physical activities, ideally outside, those have been for me the best ways to improve my sleep quality.
Yeah, I've heard very similar things. I think there's a lot of studies to show that early light exposure, especially
Mhm.
actual daylight, is very specific to improving your circadian rhythm. So
Oh
your
yeah,
body is prepared to go to sleep. So
yeah,
when I had my first child, we were having, and I think we just didn't know, but for
yeah,
anybody that has kids, they understand how hard it is to get them to sleep sometimes or sleep
uh,
through the night. So at that point in my life, we lived in a home that didn't get a lot of natural light. So tried to make sure that the kid was outside every morning,
uh,
like absorbing and getting into
uh,
sunlight to help improve their sleep cycles. Plus, keeping a kid inside all day is not cool either. So just trying to
oh,
expose her to more actual daylight, natural light earlier in the day, throughout the day, to help then improve their circadian rhythm, which is the circadian rhythm is literally your body's cycles, your body's sleep cycles
uh,
specifically for that purpose. So I have heard that as well, and I think that's important. I like to make sure that I go out when I'm reading or getting on my emails early in the morning. I do it. I'm very lucky on my front porch. The sun goes east to west, so I'm able to watch the
uh,
sunrise or shortly thereafter and catch it as it continues to go over the house. But
right.
yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, right. So what else? You mentioned sleep. What else ways to improve?
So I know you'll agree with me on this, and I'm sure you talk about it constantly on your show. But so you can actually spur the secretion of growth hormone specifically with high intensity interval training. So
Mhm.
exercise. So you talked about that a few seconds ago about how important exercise is, specifically outdoors.
Mhm.
Um, High intensity interval training, which is fast. We will call it extreme, but I'll say extreme bouts of physical activity When we say extreme, that would be, 70 to 80%, sometimes if not 90% of your total maximum output for short bursts of time with equal adequate amounts of rest thereafter in between each rounds. So that actually has been shown to increase the secretion of growth hormone, specifically post-workout. So you can literally, that's another free tip on two things, that are going to help you out. You're actually going to get your exercise in, but you're also spurring your growth hormone production.
Is there I'm not aware of, obviously I've heard about interval intensity training, but what are your thoughts on if it's like a heavy weightlifting, like intense weightlifting, or doing some other sports, for example, playing intense tennis, or doing some other sport, what is like a kind of the same effect, that you don't need to go to high interval training, doing just some jumps or something, but it's just some kind of 80% what you mentioned about your heart rate or something, like it's pretty close to kind of, if you watch it's like a zone 4 on intensity level.
Yeah. So when it comes to interval training or high intensity interval training, I think typically people think about like sprints and body weight type stuff, or tennis is exactly that. Tennis is for anybody who doesn't play tennis is probably one of the most exhausting kind of sprint sports. I think tennis is phenomenal. And that's great. That's exactly what that is. However, I think thinking of it from a sense of weights as opposed to body weight movement or sprint movement is selling yourself short. So intensity doesn't necessarily mean the weights or non-weights or whatever that is. Intensity means the amount of volume that you can move. So the amount of weight or movement you can do inside a set time period at X amount of output level, which would be, like we said, 70, 80, 90% of your output level. So whether it's weighted super heavy squats or whether it's sprints, which is just running, right? It's the amount of effort you put in inside of a given time frame. Meaning, if you give yourself 20 seconds worth of work followed by 40 seconds worth of rest, it just has to be 20 seconds of high output, right? It has to be a high output. The good thing about when you do add weights to that equation, as long as you're doing them safely and maintaining your form, right? That's where things get out of control, is when people start adding weights at high intensity, is that their form starts to fail and they start to lose that quality of movement, which is how people get hurt. But the good thing about weighted movements in a high intensity environment is it gives you very specific quantifiable metrics to show your improvement. And what I mean by that is you have a very specific amount of weight that you are lifting for a specific movement, and you have a very specific amount of reps that either you're attempting to beat, meaning the first week you're doing this type of training and you're getting 10 reps at 100 pounds for just throwing numbers out here, right? And then a week or 2 weeks later, you're getting 15 reps in the exact same amount of time at that exact same 100 pounds. You can see that in I don't remember if I said 2 or 3 weeks, but 2 to 3 weeks, you're seeing an improvement of an additional 5 reps, which is an extra 500 pounds that you moved in the exact same amount of time at the same type of intensity. You've been shown that you're, as a human being, you have improved. And those type of improvements are indicative of pushing your body forward. And that is the type of intensity that you're looking for, because that type of intensity is what literally improves your body, and you're able to measure that very specifically. You can do the same with sprinting because you can choose distances and then you can keep times, right? So it's high intensity works best regardless whether it's running, playing tennis, or lifting weights. It works best when it's done in an environment that maintains quantifiable metrics, meaning you have measuring sticks, you have things you can measure to show improvement. But also, what I think is even lesser thought about is to show regression, is what I should say. So if we're talking about an aging population, myself included, sometimes when the purpose and why it's so important to measure and have quantifiable metrics, especially when we're pushing towards high intensity interval training or any type of workout, is because as you age, you will naturally not have the abilities that you had. And I'm not saying drastically, but you won't naturally have the abilities you had 20 years ago. It's just life. Okay. It's physiology. No one can beat the clock entirely. Okay. And so by having metrics in place and understanding, sometimes you'll hit basically a point on the graph, like an access point, where your performance will regress instead of progress. And then you have to relook at how you're training and audit your training to then get back to a state where you can continue a progressive state. One of the smartest things I think I ever did, because I was very lucky. I worked in professional sports for a while, and I was able to train with professional athletes, specifically American football. And those are incredibly great athletes, especially when you're talking about intensity of movement, volume, all that kind of fun stuff. Anyway, 2-hour workouts and lifting with these guys may have worked for me in my late 20s, early 30s. But as I get closer to 40 and I'm right there, I do worse at 2-hour workouts now. I can do the same workouts, but I look worse, I feel worse, and I don't have the performance I used to. So it takes a lot of humility to look at the workouts that you're doing and then audit them as well, so you can maintain progression and not regression.
Oh yeah, no, that's very, very true. And I feel it too, like what you just mentioned about yourself, like that earlier in 20s, like my background is I was professional ice hockey player myself, and 2-hour workout was still kind of like even short one. And now I feel like that if I get the 1 hour good workout, that's maximum I can do. Like,
let me ask you a question. Do you still, I'm assuming I know the answer, but do you still even maybe recreationally play ice hockey?
Yeah, I do. I'm still ice hockey referee in pro league. So I still gotta keep up, not at the same pace anymore than those top athletes, but I'm still on the same field as them.
When you're playing with your pals or in your your league, are you guys doing full contact?
No.
Okay,
that is curious. Something I wouldn't do anymore. Like, I don't have any issues with physical contact, but if I know that if I would be one of the fittest and strongest guys there, but with playing with the physical contact at this age, it's not the same thing as it was like 20 years ago. Now, if I fell somewhere, I hurt my shoulder earlier, I would get up, I would be okay. And now I feel like that it takes like 3-4 weeks to recover. Plus, then I'm kind of a bit scared. I don't need to hurt myself. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy playing it. And if you play against someone, who haven't done it maybe ever in their life, or do it like it's physical contact at this point, I don't need it anymore.
I agree with you. And I figured I would get that answer, because the amount of time it takes to recover. A lot of people have never played real contact sports. And what happens is after a game, you feel like you get hit by a truck, right? And as you age, those recovery days take, man, I'm a combat sports guy. I'm more of a hobbyist now, but I do MMA, and it will take me, on Fridays we spar, and I'll train for a couple hours, and I will be completely wrecked for days afterwards. Where when I was a younger guy, it's like, you get back up the next day. You might be a little, a little rusty, but you skate it off. But that's why I was asking you that. But that's exactly,
it's exactly the same.
Exactly. That's exactly hormonal decline. And it's just, it's understanding that and auditing your performance as you age in some of those events that can help you again to progress and not regress. But I figured when I heard you're an ice hockey guy, I think you know exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, no, that is the hardest thing to understand. Like when you are aging, that maybe in your mind, if you are doing MMA, you know exactly what you should be doing, but then that even your brain knows what you should be doing, but body is not following, or is that as quick as it used to be, and or it's same thing like with lifting weights or whatever sport you do, and it's not the same as it used to be, and you just somehow you gotta accept it. You can still work on it, but it's totally different, especially like you mentioned, recovery times, and if you get like those kind of like injuries or something, if they happen, it's not like that next day we are good to go. It takes a lot longer.
100%.
So this is good good way to talk about a little bit about recovery as we age, as that is something like, does that each stage that the hormone affect to recovery as well?
100%, because that's what the actual primary driver of that function is. So it's important to understand what hormones really are. Like, so hormones are simply, they're just chemicals that your body creates to cause, they're called they're a chemical catalyst. Catalyst just means triggering of a change, right? So they're a chemical catalyst. They're created in your body to then trigger some sort of a change, and that change is a cellular change. Everything in our body is made up of different cells, right? And they have to be triggered to operate. And what I mean by operate is cells die off every second. Uncountable, innumerable amounts of cells are dying off, and then new cells are being split or different. That's called differentiation. When cells multiply and they replace dead cells, that's called multiplication and differentiation. So cells split literally from 1 into 2, and then they continue to split as they die off, and they replace them. So what hormones do, specifically, we can continue on the growth hormone train, is hormone is secreted by the pituitary gland. It's in the bottom of your brain, and then it gets sent to the liver. The liver converts it into what are called growth factors. We spoke about one earlier called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor number 1, which is its direct metabolite. And what growth factors are, they're called protein cytokines, and they are cellular signals. They are then sent out into the blood to trigger the cellular functions we just talked about. One of the primary functions that people really like to talk about that's real fun is, muscle cell differentiation and multiplication, because muscle cells, in order to repair, to grow, they have to split, they have to multiply, and they have to take the place of dying cells or dead cells. That growth factor that causes that change is IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor number 1, direct end result of human growth hormone. The issue with aging is that because the hormone declines and continues to kind of snowball and decline more and more and more, that automatically means that the cell triggers, those growth factors that are being created from the conversion of the hormone, are going to go down along with it. So if you have a specific rate of decline of cell die-off, so cells are dying off, and as you age, the amount of replacement cells are going down. That means you're not replacing the dying off cells as much as you used to. And as you age, that number goes down and down and down. So your rate of cellular decline outweighs or outnumbers the amount of cells that you're able to replicate to replace them. That is literally aging that leads you to death. Okay. So when we're talking about recovery, we're talking about literally replacing muscle tissue or even wound healing, right? Like it's a growth factor that triggers the cells in your skin and in muscle tissue and in literally living tissue to regrow and replace, to scab, to heal an open wound. So when you're talking about muscle recovery, for workout recovery, the lower the amount of growth factors that you have to trigger cellular regeneration, to replace muscle cell tissue, et cetera, will go down, which means the amount of time it takes to recover will go up. So that explains when we were just talking about, feeling hurt or how many days, and, it takes this, and what used to take a day takes 3 weeks. That's because the rate of cellular triggers that you're creating in your body goes down along with the hormone. So that hormone is literally the crux. It's the linchpin of how your body recovers.
No, that it makes totally sense, and it's not so. That's why, older you get, longer you need to recover, and
100%.
It's the same way. Like when I was a younger professional and looking like older guys, they were first guys to do their recovery things, and they were first ones doing warm up, last ones leaving the hockey rink, and also really talking about that, I don't like drinking that much anymore, prioritizing sleep. And I was thinking 20 years ago in 20s, that looking up that, what are those? Are they old, or what are they doing? And now I understand it. It's just when you are younger, you don't understand it, that it takes so much more effort actually to keep up with the younger ones. Plus, also obviously, like you mentioned, recovery and even maintaining your physical level, it takes a lot more effort than it took earlier.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. That's just the way life is. It's just how things are. We're prioritizing things like warm up and cool down is what's the crazy part, like mentally, like thinking, and I don't know if I've ever like verbalized this before, but what the crazy part is, it's just funny. It's kind of like what we call Murphy's Law over here, which is you have, when you're younger, you're 20, you have a lot more time to devote to warm up, cool down, stretching, but you never do it.
Yeah.
And then when you're older and you're you have way less time to do any of these things. And then now it's like, if you had I just done these things earlier, it would be huge, because you couldn't pay me. You couldn't pay me years ago to do proper warm-ups, stretching. Now I have to stretch every morning, and I got to put a little routine together because I'm in so much pain after a Friday sparring session, because it's wreaks havoc on your body. Now I got to sit on the floor and stretch because I'm an old man, and that's just that's just part of life.
Yeah. Is there some what kind of tips you have for recovery and like when we are getting older? What are your favorite advices you want to give?
Man, that is a really great question, and I don't think I've ever actually been asked that question, which is, it may sound surprising, but I really never have. So as a I'm a huge sleep guy, and I used to wear the wearables, and I do the company that I own and run does make sleep products, and I'm a big proponent of those. The sleep products that are made and used in a way that don't mess with your actual human physiology. So I'm a big sleep guy. I think tracking your sleep, I don't really do it as much anymore because I understand my sleep cycles, but I think someone should commit to tracking their sleep for a while. I did it for almost exactly a year. Tracking your sleep, paying attention, learning. It's just like working out, right? Like testing certain things, but really learning your body, how it responds, when it feels good, when it doesn't, and giving it, I say these terms a lot because I think they're very important, but attaching quantifiable metrics to those things. So sleep is number one. Really prioritizing it is absolutely number one. Understanding what good sleep feels like, what your sleep cycles, when they engage, what time you need to go to bed, what time you go. That's my number one thing. I think sleep is a really, really, really big deal. I think people, and again, I'm speaking from somebody in the United States, and we have a lot of chronic illness and a lot of we use the word chronic over here all the time because it's just constant. We go through and stay, a ton of Americans a large majority of Americans are chronically dehydrated, meaning they just don't drink enough water. And water being dehydrated is the fastest way to decrease human performance and increase the amount of time you're going to feel sore or tired, etc. Again, being too low, being sleep deprived, being dehydrated spikes a different hormone in your body. And that hormone is called cortisol. And cortisol stops all the good, let's just keep it real basic. All the good processes is in your body, and only it puts you in a fight or flight zone. Okay. It's important to have that hormone, but you never want to live in that state. It's an elevated stress state. You don't want to live in that state. That shuts down everything. So, sleep, hydration, and what we like to say is, especially with athletes, again, I live in Florida, so it's hotter climates, it's humid. There's a lot of sweating with athletes. So we like to say about an ounce per pound of body weight a day. I think normal people probably can get 3/4 of an ounce per pound of body weight, which might not sound like a lot, but if you do the math, you'll really see how much water you're not getting, and that's very, very important.
Yeah.
And then I do a morning stretch routine. I haven't done it forever. It's hard to commit to because it's very painful, but it's very effective. And the long-term benefits, stretching, just like working out, I think working out gives you a faster gratification than stretching, but stretching is probably the least immediate gratification tool, but probably the better tool long term. And my best advice for people who do not stretch, which is I'm one of those people and have to be forced, is just keep it simple, keep it short, and just keep it to something you can actually commit to and perform every day. A plan always looks really great on paper, but the best plan is the plan that you actually execute, not just put on your wall and hope to get done.
Yeah, no, I love those. And water especially, like obviously sleep is something what I think most of the people know. Water, it's like, it's important, but it's that for how it's affecting for recovery, that's a very good point. And I gotta disagree a little bit with stretching, like, or I don't say that it's a bad thing, but if I would have to choose, like that was something like when I grew up, it's like a 80s, 90s, that was the only thing, like stretching, and nobody was talking about mobility exercises. And now I'm a big believer of mobility.
So what do you mean the difference? So what are the difference between mobility exercises and stretching? Because to me, and we probably are on a couple different pages here, but to me, stretching is mobility. Mobility is stretching. But please explain. Help me understand your differences between stretching and mobility exercises.
Stretching is like kind of static stretching, like that you stretch your hamstrings, biceps, chest, whatever. And mobility is kind of joint mobility, where you try to increase range of motion on, let's say, on your ankles, knees, hips, shoulders. But it's kind of like active motion, like that. Let's say that for shoulders you would do arm circles, or finding some exercises, or ankle, like that. There is no, like, stretching is kind of for muscle, and you are stretching your muscle, and mobility is kind of for joints. And what I have seen, like working with the people, like that, often the biggest issues is like if you have lower back pain, you have a knee pain. The problem is often not like, for example, lower back pain. Majority of the people get lower back pain from lack of mobility on their hips. And doing some hip mobility exercises, it's affecting, or it's helping to usually to fix your lower back issues. Or if you have, for example, knee issues, the often problem is not that there is something wrong. Obviously, if you need surgery for your knee, there might be something wrong with your knee, but where it is coming from, it's kind of finding the real reason, what is the problem. And often, for example, knee pain, the issue is lack of mobility from your ankles. So that is just that there are simple tests what you can make.
What's your number one mobility exercise for increasing the flexibility of your ankles to then alleviate knee pain?
Knee pain.
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah, no, I'm ankle. You can test it like just if you go to YouTube, look ankle mobility test. It's basically just on other knee and moving forward, backward.
Yep.
Or then you can go like a downward dog. Like it's kind of like it's almost like an ankle. It's more like a kind of stretching. If you stretch your calves, it's you are doing actually same time you are trying to improve your ankle mobility at the same time.
100%. We're talking similar languages, but we're just maybe
it's just that
I agree with you.
It's just for me, like doing those kind of active things, like a rotational stuff for your back and spine, instead of like, at least here in Italy, I don't know how it is in States, but if I say to stretching, it means for majority of the people, it's a static stretching that you are holding.
It is, yeah. But I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying about mobility and stuff. So we call that, and again, we do call it mobility exercises, but more of a dynamic stretch, a actual movement. Yep, I know what you're talking about. 100%. I can't say that I get enough of that done, because I don't. I've just been working on static stretching right now, because I am just I am not the best when it comes to recovery. I'll be honest with you. I am the best for painful intensity of exercise and getting those things done. Like I said, I was the first person to say it. The investment in the recovery afterwards is harder than the workout to me itself. 100%.
Yeah, no, it's I struggle with myself too. Like it's not like if I would need, but mobility or stretching. Mobility is a good thing. Like that is something like what you could do part of your warm up. Or if you go like if you go to gym, you know you have, let's say that you have a maximum working on maximum strength or your maximum speed, where you have to have longer rest time. So during that rest time, you could be doing like that is what I have been working. I have an issue with my wrist mobility, and all my resting times I do, because good mobility workout, it's 1 to 10 minutes. It doesn't take forever. And especially if you have some kind of mobility issues, when you know which area is your issue, work on it, because mobility is not that you have to do it like hours or even 30 minutes. It's a good workout. It's like I said, 1 minute, and you could include it as a part of your warm up or doing between the sets, or even if it's a 1 minute after your workout, part of your cool down. So you get at least addressing those where you have some issues to start making, because it's like everything, when you practice it and you do it more often, because that is more important with mobility, is do it not long at the time, but doing it very consistent.
Yeah. I mean, that's great advice, actually, is to put it in between your rest sets and just, pepper it into your actual existing training regimen. I love it. Very smart.
No, because I wouldn't like that. And that is example with the static stretching. I wouldn't do, like, if I'm doing some heavy bench press, I wouldn't do static chest stretches between my sets, but mobility exercises, that is not affecting at all.
Yeah, very cool.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about then those what your company is doing, and of course we have been talking about natural ways, and but obviously there is a supplementation, and what kind of supplementation, what supplements are helping with that growth hormone, and what your company is doing.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few options for individuals who are looking to increase hormone levels. The very common way, and again, I'm going to speak from a guy who lives in the States, because that's who I am, and that's where we do most of our business. We do a fair amount of business in Europe and Asia as well, even in Africa. But there's a couple different ways that people attack the growth hormone decline issue. The first of which is literally a synthetic hormone replacement, where you're going to go to your physician, you're going to get checked out. They're going to say, hey, you're low in IGF-1, you're low on growth hormone. We're going to give you a synthetic hormone injection. So you're going to inject, typically with growth hormone, it could be daily, and it could be, every other day, every 72 hours. But you're going to inject a literal synthetic replacement of that hormone to offset your body's natural decline. That drug absolutely works. It's been around since about 1968. It's really popular in the United States, China, Russia, especially in the performance athletics world. The issue with it, and again, I can only speak from the States, is that now it's become extremely highly regulated for probably the last 10 plus years, which then leads to legal issues, and then that leads to extreme levels of cost. So in the United States, depending upon where you're at, that treatment can range anywhere from typically around $3,000 to $10,000 US dollars a month. Okay, so you're looking at the highest level about $100,000 a year. At the lowest level, I don't know, what's 3 times 12? You got 36 grand, 30 grand a year. That's a lot of money. Oh, yeah. The average American only makes, I think, like $36,000 a year. So that's an entire typical average income. So it's not exactly the most popular treatment. Now, also in many parts of the United States, it's illegal to be prescribed for hormonal decline for anti-aging athletic purposes. So that's where that lies. It also comes along with a lot of potential risks, side effects, from carpal tunnel syndrome to insulin sensitivity issues to cardiac issues, all kinds of nonsense. Doesn't mean you're going to get those risks, or excuse me, doesn't mean you're going to incur any negative side effects like that, but it doesn't mean that you're not, right? So each individual is different. Then you have your second option, which has been popular for several years, are called peptides. And peptides is a general term. There's a lot of different drugs that fall under the quote unquote peptide moniker or name. We will focus specifically on what are called growth hormone secretagogues, which means it's a drug that you will take. It's synthetically created in a lab. We call them compounding pharmacies here. It's a synthetic amino acid chain that manipulates the glandular function in your brain. So earlier we talked about the growth hormone being secreted by the pituitary gland. So this drug will manipulate, basically think of the pituitary like a lemon, and it's going to squeeze that lemon for as much juice as it can to create more growth hormone. That comes with its own levels of side effects. You are synthetically manipulating the glandular function. Anytime you intervene in human physiology synthetically, you again run the risk of certain types of side effects. Here in the United States, the FDA has, since of November of 2023, put a ban, or what they call Schedule 2. They've listed the drug as what's called a Schedule 2, which means a bunch of stuff, but basically it means you can't use the drug what's considered off-label, which is for anti-aging, aesthetic purposes, etc. So that, comes with its own issues. And then your third option would be the product we create, which we call BioPro Plus. And all it is where peptides create more growth hormone synthetically, and prescription HGH injections replace the hormone directly. Either way, both of those drugs are still going to have to convert that growth hormone into those growth factors we talked about earlier, those cell signals. So the liver creates converts that hormone into those cell signals. The cell signals are only proteins. They're amino acid chains. They're proteins. They're naturally created. And those are the cell signals that are triggering the cellular differentiation and multiplication that we're looking for. So what BioPro is we forget all about the manipulation of the glandular function. We don't replace the hormone. We don't mess with any of your natural physiology. All we do is give you a non-synthetic formulation of those growth factors, those cell signals. They're called protein cytokines, or just proteins, directly. And that way you can trigger the same cellular function without ever negatively impacting your natural hormone function or endocrine system. So where the other drugs, we like to say, work on the left side of the liver, where they're replacing or synthetically creating that hormone, we're just going to give you the end result, which is what you're after anyway. And because we're not manipulating any of that nonsense, there's no negative side effects that are related to it. Your body just uses these cell triggers as needed. And then anything that's left over from the formula that your body's not using, it just simply excretes, whether through urine or sweat. And there's no negative effect on, this is called negative feedback loop, but there's no negative effect on your natural hormone secretion.
Mm-hmm. Sounds very interesting. So how people can get your products, get in contact with you? So
if you're here, if you're lucky enough to be in the area, and we do have physicians internationally. I know you said you're Italian. I'm not sure if we have any doctors.
I'm originally from Finland. I do live in Italy, but I think
Finland. Sorry.
Yeah, I do have listeners from all over the world, and I think
people are going to think I sound like an idiot.
Listened actually in the US.
Accent.
Yeah, no, I'm originally from Finland, so it's not English is my second language, so it's not my first language, as you probably hear. So, but I do. My audience is from all over the world, so
yeah,
I'm sure someone in the US is listening too.
If you're lucky enough to be in an area where we have clinicians, clearly the most populated area of physicians we have are here in the United States. You can get our products from any one of those doctors. They carry them right there in their office. They provide them directly to your patient. You leave that day with it. You're good to go. If you don't live close to one of our actual clinics or providers, we have built the online platform where you can go to our website and you can order directly, and we do ship internationally. There's only a few countries that don't like us sending them things. But most of Europe is good to go. And actually a lot of Asia is good to go. And Africa is actually very good to go. I think most of the issues occur in Eastern Europe, like countries like Russia, and actually South American countries like Mexico and some of the other ones further south. I can't remember them by name. But other than that, for the large majority, we're able to ship to many different nations.
Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, you can get it in just a few days. We ship to Australia. It takes like 6 days.
Yeah. And what is your website? It's a
bioproteintech.com. Yeah. Bioproteintech.com.
Yeah.
bioproteintech.com. And then if you're a social media fellow, you can check us out on the Instagram. It's the exact same name, BioProteinTech, @BioProteinTech. So at symbol BIOPROTEINTECH. We'd love to have you as part of the team. Come check us out. You got any questions? We are, we're here to help out.
Perfect. I will add the links to show notes. And thank you for coming to my show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And thank you.
Hold up, friend. Do you love Fit Me Turo Fitness podcast? If so, the best way to say thank you is to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review on iTunes. I know every podcaster wants you to leave a review, but it's because those reviews help the podcast to reach more people. I truly want to know what you think, and if this particular episode resonated with you, would you also please share it? Either send a link to someone who you think will find it valuable, or take a screenshot and post it into your social media and tell your friends and family why they should listen it. Make sure you tag me so I can hear your feedback and give you a little love. And if you aren't already following me on Instagram or TikTok, that's the perfect time to hit that follow button. Thank you for being here and listening to Fit Me Turo Fitness podcast.